A filmmaker finishes a short film. They submit it to 43 festivals simultaneously. 3 weeks later, they receive an acceptance from a smaller regional festival. They accept it. They are excited. 2 months after that, they receive a request for more information from Tribeca, a standard follow-up step before a potential selection. And then the programmer's office asks a single question. What is your current premiere status? The filmmaker has a world premiere on record at a regional festival that screened 30 people in a converted church hall. Tribeca's consideration ends there. The filmmaker did not make a bad film. They did not submit incorrectly. They lost a Tribeca consideration because they did not understand premiere status. What is it, how it works, and how it is consumed? In 10 years of festival programming, I have seen this scenario more than any other single submission mistake. Today, I'm going to make sure you never make it. I have managed film festival programming across 5 countries. I have been the programmer who asked the premiere status question. I have been in the room when a film's premiere status created a selection problem that could not be resolved. I have written the internal notes when a film we wanted was no longer eligible because of a decision the filmmaker made weeks earlier without understanding its consequences. What am I about to describe is not a theoretical risk. It's the operational reality of how premiere status functions inside a festival selection process and how filmmakers consistently misread what premiere status actually is. The framework. Before the 4 traps, a precise definition. Premiere status is not a single category. It's a hierarchy, and the distinctions between its levels are material. World premiere means your film has never been publicly screened anywhere in the world, in any format, to any audience. This is the highest premiere status. A small number of festivals required it. Most major festivals preferred it. International premiere means your film has screened in one country, typically its country of origin, but has never screened outside that country. If your film premiered at a Canadian festival, its international premiere remains available for festivals in Europe, the US, or elsewhere. North American premiere means your film has screened internationally, but has never screened in North America, the United States, Canada, or Mexico. US premiere means your film has screened in Canada or Mexico or internationally, but has not screened in the United States. Regional premiere means your film has screened in the US or elsewhere, but has not screened in a specific geographic region, a city, a state, a metropolitan area. Each of these statuses is consumed independently. A film can simultaneously offer an international premiere, a North American premiere, and a US premiere. If it has only screened in its own country of origin, understanding which status remains available at any point in your festival run is the foundational skill that prevents every trap I'm about to describe. Trap number 1. Simultaneous mass submission without a premiere map. This is the most common mistake in the entire premiere status category, and it is a direct product of how submission platforms are designed. Film Freeway allows you to submit to dozens of festivals in a single session. Nothing in the submission interface tells you what happens to your premiere status when you do. Here's what happens. When you submit to 40 festivals simultaneously, you are submitting to festivals with entirely different premiere requirements and timelines. Some of those festivals will notify you of a selection within 3 weeks. Others will not notify you for 4 months. The festivals with the fastest notification cycles are almost never the festivals with the highest prestige. The festivals with the highest prestige, the festivals that would materially advance your career, have the longest review cycles. They are still reviewing when you have already accepted an early selection from a faster festival. And once you accept that early selection, once your film screens publicly, a premiere status is consumed permanently. I want to be precise about which status is consumed, because this is where the misunderstanding most often occurs. If you accept a selection at a regional festival in Portland, Oregon, your world premiere is consumed. Your international premiere, your North American premiere, and your US premiere are also consumed simultaneously. The only premiere status that remains available is a regional premiere in territories where your film has not yet screened. Tribeca, Sundance, SXSW, and their equivalent international festivals. Festivals that prefer or requires a world or North American premiere for a competitive consideration are now close to your film, not because of quality, but because of timing. The prevention. Before you submit to a single festival, build a premiere map. List every festival you intend to submit to. Identify which premiere status each one requires or prefers. Tier your submission calendar so that your highest priority festivals receive your submission before smaller festivals who faster notification cycles could trigger an early acceptance. You are managing a finite resource. Treat it as one. Trap number 2, accepting an early selection before your Tier 1 window closes. This scenario is active in filmmaker communities right now. A filmmaker submits to a large number of festivals. A smaller festival, a regional program, a genre festival, a newer festival building its submission volume, selects the film and sends an acceptance notification. The filmmaker is excited. This is their first selection. They accept. 3 weeks later, a larger festival, one they submitted to in the same submission session, reaches out. They want premiere confirmation before advancing the film to the next stage of their review. The film has screened. The world premiere is consumed. The larger festival's interest ends. I have been on both sides of this communication. As a programmer, the follow-up to the filmmaker is professional and brief. It does not convey how close the film was. It does not explain what was lost. The filmmaker receives what appears to be a standard rejection and does not understand what happened. There is an additional layer to this trap that is less understood. What happens if you attempt to withdraw from the smaller festival after accepting in order to preserve your premiere status for the larger ones? The answer from every professional in the festival circuit who has addressed this publicly is consistent. Withdrawal after acceptance is a serious professional breach. If a festival has programmed your film, if it appears in a printed schedule, if tickets have been sold against it, if a screening block has been structured around its runtime. Withdrawal causes operational damage that affects the festival's audience and program integrity. The professional community observes this. It affects your reputation in programming circles. Furthermore, you cannot use a festival's laurel for a screening that did not occur. If you withdraw, the selection credit is forfeit. The damage is complete. The prevention. Do not accept any festival selection until you have allowed your Tier 1 submission window to reach its natural notification timeline. For most major festivals, that window is 3 to 5 months from submission deadline to final notification. If an early acceptance arrives before that window has closed, contact that accepting festival directly and ask whether they can hold your acceptance pending final confirmation from another festival in active consideration. Some festivals, not all, but some, will accommodate this request professionally and briefly. The response to that request will also tell you a great deal about the festival's operational culture. Trap number 3, online publication before the festival circuit is complete. This trap operates differently from the first two. It does not involve a festival selection. It does not require an acceptance or a screening. It is triggered by a single action that most filmmakers take automatically, without considering its premiere status implications. Uploading the film to YouTube, Vimeo, or any publicly accessible online platform. The mechanism is direct. Most festivals that require or prefer premiere status define public screening to include online publication. A film that is publicly accessible on a streaming platform has been seen. Its premiere status is consumed. In practical terms, a film uploaded to a public Vimeo page before its festival circuit is complete is ineligible for premiere consideration at any festival that defines public availability as a prior screening. I want to be precise about what publicly accessible means in this context, because the distinctions matter. A private Vimeo link, password protected, shared only with festival submission portals for screening review, does not consume premiere status. This is the standard submission format. A screener link that requires authentication is not a public screening. A public Vimeo page, unlisted or otherwise, where the film is accessible without authentication, is a different matter. Most festival submission guidelines address this distinction directly. Read them precisely. The filmmakers most frequently caught in this trap are those who upload a film for community feedback, for a portfolio showcase, or for a crowdfunding campaign before the festival circuit has concluded. The intention has nothing to do with the festivals. The consequence does. The prevention. Do not publish your film publicly online until your festival circuit is complete, or until you have made a deliberate decision that the premiere status no longer serves your submission strategy. When that decision arrives, when you are ready to release the film publicly, make it intentionally, not accidentally, in the service of a different goal. Trap number 4, misreading which premiere status a festival actually requires, because it can cause filmmakers to avoid submitting to festivals where they remain fully eligible. The error operates in both directions. The first direction, as a filmmaker, assumes that a festival requires a world premiere and does not submit because their world premiere has been consumed. In reality, the festival requires only a North American premiere or a US premiere, both of which the filmmaker still holds. A valid submission never happens. A potential selection is never generated because the filmmaker misread the requirements. The second direction, a filmmaker reads a festival's premiere preferences, not requirements, as a hard eligibility condition. Many festivals state that they prefer or prioritize films with premiere status. This is not a disqualification condition. It's a programming preference. A film without premiere status may still be submitted and considered, particularly if it aligns strongly with the festival's programming identity in other ways. The programmer who receives the submission is weighing fit, artistic merit, and premiere status together. Premiere status is one variable, not the only variable. There's a third, more specific misreading that I want to address directly because it came up in a recent public conversation with a festival director. Tribeca Film Festival dropped its premiere status requirement for short films. Sundance has no premiere requirement for shorts. These are two of the most prestigious festivals in the world. If you are a short filmmaker who has avoided submitting to Sundance or Tribeca because you believe premiere status was required, that assumption may be incorrect. Read the current submission guidelines directly. From the official submission page, every cycle, festival policies change. An assumption made 2 years ago may not reflect current eligibility. The prevention. Read the current submission guidelines of every festival in your Tier 1 and Tier 2 list at the beginning of each submission cycle. Do not rely on previous cycle knowledge, community summaries, or Film Freeway metadata fields. The official submission page is the only authoritative source. Identify whether the premiere requirement is a hard eligibility condition or a programming preference. Identify which specific premiere status is required: World, International, North American, or US. Map your remaining premiere statuses against each festival's actual requirements. Submit where you are eligible. Do not disqualify yourself on assumptions. The strategic use of premiere status, what most filmmakers never consider. The fourth trap describes how premiere status is lost. I want to spend a moment on the inverse. How premiere status is used as a strategic asset by filmmakers who understand it precisely. A film that enters the festival circuit with its world premiere intact holds a full deck. Every festival in every tier is accessible. The submission strategy can be executed in the correct sequence. Tier 1 first, Tier 2 after the Tier 1 window closes, regional festivals in the final phase of the circuit. There is a specific dynamic in committee deliberation, which I covered in the previous video in this series, that premiere status directly influences. When two films of equivalent quality are competing for a single program slot, and one holds a premiere and the other does not, the premiere is frequently the deciding variable. Not because the premiere makes the film better, because a programmer who selects a world premiere is programming an event. An audience attending a screening knows they are the first audience in the world to see this film. That is a curatorial statement. It's a programming asset. The filmmakers who extract maximum value from the festival circuit treats their premiere status as inventory. They manage it deliberately. They know precisely which statuses remain available at every point in their circuit. They make acceptance decisions only after consulting that inventory against their current Tier 1 pipeline. That discipline is not complicated. It requires a spreadsheet, a clear submission calendar, and the willingness to hold an acceptance for 2 weeks while a larger festival completes its review cycle. Most filmmakers who lose premiere status lose it not through bad decisions, but through the absence of any system at all. 4 traps, complete framework. Trap 1. Simultaneous mass submission without a premiere map. Submitting to dozens of festivals at once exposes your film to early acceptances before your Tier 1 window closes. Build a premiere map before you submit to a single festival. Tier your submission calendar. Manage premiere as status as a finite resource. Trap number 2. Accepting an early selection before your Tier 1 window closes. Once you accept and your film screens, premiere status is consumed permanently. Do not accept a selection until your Tier 1 notification timeline has cleared. If an early acceptance arrives, contact the festival professionally and ask whether a brief hold is possible. Trap number 3. Online publication before the circuit is complete. A publicly accessible upload consumes premiere status in the way a public screening does. Do not publish your film online until your festival circuit is complete or until you have made a deliberate decision that the premiere is no longer strategically relevant. Trap number 4. Misreading which premiere status a festival actually requires. Read the current submission guidelines of every festival in your list, every cycle from the official page. Distinguish between hard eligibility conditions and programming preferences. Map your remaining premiere statuses against actual requirements, not assumptions. Do not self-disqualify on information that may no longer be accurate. Premiere status is a programming asset, finite, non-renewable, and disproportionately valuable at the festivals where it matters most. Manage it accordingly. Independent filmmakers spend months, sometimes years, on a single film. The premiere status decisions that determines which festivals can consider that film take minutes to make. They are made on submission platforms, on acceptance notification emails, on Vimeo privacy settings. They are made quickly without a system, without an understanding of what is being consumed. The festivals that can most materially advance your career have the longest review cycles and the strictest premiere requirements. They are the last to notify and the first to be foreclosed by an unmanaged premiere. The framework in this video does not take long to implement. A premiere map takes an afternoon to build. A submission calendar takes an hour to structure. The return on that preparation is preservation of access to the festivals where your film has the greatest potential impact. Treat premiere status as the asset it is. The festival circuit will respond accordingly. The previous video in this series covers the full 5-stage selection pipeline. Every stage, every gatekeeper, every point of failure and leverage. Subscribe if this series is useful for you. Leave a question below if you are navigating a premiere status decision right now. I read every comment. I will answer specifically.